want to say what a morning. What a morning. Round of applause to Scott, to Jennifer, to Joe, Clara, everybody. Those of you who have been to conferences or run them know how hard they are to put together. So I think we should just give them a round of applause. So my name is Alia Crum. I'm an associate professor of psychology here at Stanford. I'm also an athlete. I was an elite gymnast growing up. I then turned to ice hockey and was a Division I ice hockey player in college at a far inferior school on the East Coast, not to be named here. And then I devoted my attention to triathlon, was a devoted triathlete. And now I guess I get my HIIT workouts cheering for my 7-year-old on the soccer field. But this is just so wonderful to be in a space where people are focused on women and women athletes from all the dimensions. So our focus today is going to be on the mental side of things. Yes, Greg, I think the brain is connected to the body. It turns out it matters. I think as a research psychologist, a scientist, I study something that I experienced as an athlete. And that was that we can be the same physical being from one day to the next, 1 minute to the next, but perform completely differently depending on the state of our mind. So that's the conversation we're going to begin to have today. We're going to start to ask questions like, well, what state of the mind? What should I think? What should I believe? How should I feel? I look at the students who are all competing today. They're training, 20 hours a day, 20 hours a week. Sometimes it feels like 20 hours a day. And they're putting that time into training the physical body. And yet even though they know the mind matters, how much of that time is actually devoted to actually thinking about training the mind and what we call mental fitness. So we'll sort of broadly define mental fitness as the ability to be aware of your mindsets, to focus your mind, to regulate your emotions, to regulate your mindsets or your beliefs. So what are those and how we do that? So that's what we're going to be discussing today. I have an awesome opportunity to be with this fantastic panel. We have Yetsa Twathi-Wasornu, who's here she's the director of the Sports Equity Lab at Stanford and an associate professor. We have Kelly Morin Miller, who's a licensed psychologist and director of mental health and performance in the athletic department. We have Coach John Tanner, head coach of Stanford water polo and 10 times NCAA champion. Snaps for that. And we have Sydney Barta, who's a Paralympic track and field athlete and 5-time national champion. Cheers to that. So those were their labels, but what I'm going to do is ask each of them to give you a little bit more in-depth introduction to who they are by answering the question of how did you come to realize the importance of the mind in the work you do as an athlete or a coach or connected with athletes. Sydney, do you want to begin?
Oh yeah, hi everyone. I'm super excited to be here. So a little bit about me. Obviously I run track, and track is a really amazing sport because it is really a super mental game. We talk a lot about training the body, but we talk maybe even more about training the mind. It's kind of a beautiful sport because your nervous system has to be engaged to be able to sprint at the level you need to sprint. So just on a physiological level, that is really impactful. But then also how do you deal with stress? How do you handle it? I've also dealt with my fair share of injuries. So coming back from that, building that resilience has been really impactful in my life as well. So super excited to be here.
So sitting next to Sydney, I guess I'm going to have to follow her throughout this 45 minutes. So I go by JT, and I'm not on this panel for any severe trauma I've incurred. I've been really blessed in my life, fortunate to be able to be an undergraduate here and coach 1 year as an assistant. Then I took over my first head coaching job. Division I was at University of the Pacific. I was 24. And in another stroke of blind luck, I arrived to UOP when it was an enclave and sort of an intellectual startup of sports psych PhDs when that was first becoming a thing, along with practitioners of the highest level. So there were a number of sports psych PhDs on the faculty there who were also coaches. People like Terry Luskevich, who went on to become a 3-time women's volleyball Olympic coach and was on the faculty there. And then Ted Leland, who did his sports psych PhD here, came to be the AD before he became Stanford's athletic director. And so I was just surrounded by these amazing people who understood fully the value of the mind, and they also drew in a lot of other amazing coaches. So 3 or 4 NFL Super Bowl champion coaches. Bill Walsh would come hang out there. Pete Carroll, who had gone to school there. So one of the people who's known most broadly for his embrace of the mental game. So yeah, just a lot of fortune along the way.
Thanks. So I think like a lot of us in this room, I grew up playing a lot of different sports. Basketball is probably the one I've played the longest. And when I think about when I started thinking about that, mind, with the role of the mind, probably I was in like 8th grade, high school. Around that time, I had my basketball coach at the time would include lots of different, quotes and kind of get us thinking about how to approach our training. My dad is a retired psychologist, and he actually worked with our team, and we did learn about progressive muscle relaxation and using the power of mental imagery as part of free throw shooting routines and a number of different things. And then also around that same time, I was a huge Bulls fan growing up, and this was kind of in the heyday of their dynasty. I read everything I could get my hands on. Jordan Rules, that book came out, I think when I was in 8th grade. Phil Jackson's The Sacred Hoops. And so just really interested in learning about building a team and a culture, and then also that mind-body connection. And so that I think is really when my curiosity around these topics kind of got started, and I was fortunate enough to go on and study from there and get to do this awesome work that we're doing here.
Yeah, and I think I'll follow on from that just to agree with what everyone has said. I've been a little bit of a misfit athlete. I was born in London, raised in Boston to very West African family, so mom Nigerian, dad's Ghanaian, meaning that just means I can only be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, or a failure. Or a failure. Yeah. So I chose medicine. And the entire meandering way, I was training and competing through medical school, internship, residency, my Fulbright fellowship, even through my first couple years on faculty. I was still competing internationally. So I did it the crazy way, and I don't recommend anyone do that ever and long jump until they're 36. Like, that's not very smart, especially for the right hip. But what I learned along the way is that all my best coaches always were more mental conditioning coaches than anything. And when I was competing, I would say for Ghana, because I trained in the States, but I competed for Ghana, just that very, very sort of dichotomy between having a lot of material wealth and having no material wealth. But then in the Ghanaian team, we had massive cultural wealth and relational wealth. And I think our mindset was so strong and beautiful because we all knew that, I am because we are. And so just having the very lengthy scenic athletic career that I've had, again, not recommended, allowed me to really understand the importance of feeling and being well while also winning. And I didn't separate those two ever because that's just the way my coaches taught me and my experience taught me. So yeah, thanks for the question.
Great. Yeah, the morning was so engaging, thinking about, the physical body, and in particular, we talked a lot about injuries, illnesses, and how, as female athletes, we can prevent them or recover from them. But of course, there's the psychological component of stress and setback and injury. And, from a psychological perspective, these illnesses and injuries are something, of course, you would want to avoid, but they're not often inevitable part of sport. And so a question that we're interested in is how, once you are exposed to an injury or a setback, how do you recover psychologically from that? And what's interesting about the psychological literature is that you often see two diverging paths. You see people who are really kind of forever traumatized by this, kind of downward spiraling. But you also see people who come back not just, fine, but better than they were before. Both physiologically and also psychologically. They've sort of reached a new level of understanding, of being able to focus. So I want to ask Sydney to share a little bit more about your injury and, if you will, how that shaped your own way of thinking mentally and your mental skill set.
Yeah, absolutely. So just background, I kind of had two major injuries that kind of shaped a lot of my career. So the first one being when I was 6 years old, a traumatic accident that led to the loss of my left leg below the knee. And then most recently, I had a stress fracture about a week before the Paralympic trials for Paris. But it was like a month after I just won silver at World Championships. So, it was a really interesting time period to go through something like that. And I'm sure many people in this room have dealt with injuries, and I think it was looking back, it was a beautiful time for it to happen because it forced me to kind of reckon with, do I love the journey as much as I love the outcome? And I think as athletes, it's super easy to say that you love the journey when, you're training to win a medal, or you're training to make a team, or, you're training for a world record. That's the part that's easier. That does require mental toughness, but can you say that you love the journey or that you're mentally resilient when it's not the outcome that you wanted to have happen? And so when I was kind of sitting last summer, I think it was, just not making the Paralympic team and watching my teammates get to go, kind of like letting everyone down in terms of the great season I was going to have at the games and winning these medals for Team USA. I think it was kind of like you get to choose two paths. Is it you let this kind of like decimate you and take so much of who you are as a person, or do you choose to see it as an opportunity or as a learning, a method of learning? And so what I kind of found in that time was to be resilient, right? Like this is the thoughts I was having. Resilience is a beautiful word because it can only exist when there's hardship. You can only be resilient when there's hardship. You can only have courage when there's fear. And so that was something that I've really kind of clung to. So it was reframing for me. I think that was the thing that I really kind of clung to, is I started to see it as an opportunity. I had been through the gauntlet in terms of trials and winning medals and finals and stuff like that, but could I still be resilient when there was an injury and I was just trying to get back to where I was before? And that for me was really impactful in terms of my mentality. And the second thing that I want to talk about too is why. What's your why as an athlete? I think sometimes it's easy to lose it when you're, winning all those national championships. You're like, okay, well, I want to win. But truly, all of us as athletes and as people have a fundamental reason why we are motivated to do the things we do. And in that moment, when I was kind of stripped from, everything that I had projected for my life for years and years, I was kind of left with, what is this why? And is the why worth it? And for me, because, having had an accident when I was so little, my why was just because I get a chance to. And that was not always the case in my scenario, get a chance to run. So yeah, I think everyone can kind of look back into their why, and then it's grounding. And whatever turbulence you face in your athletic career or personal career, it's not as destabilizing because you're centered in that why. So for me, those are the two.
Thank you for sharing. Can I ask, how did you do that? Like, were there people who you talked to? Did you have therapists? Was it parents? Was it coaches? Like, how did you get there?
Certainly coaches. I think it's also like it's like a moral grounding based in gratitude for everything that people have done for me to get to that point. I think as athletes, as track athletes, I think people often say it's an individual sport, but it's definitely not. There are so many people who make sacrifices for you and believe in you. And I was just thinking about that the whole time, where I thought this just can't be the time when I give up. There's a lot more that I have to do to kind of pay it forward with the role that I've been given.
Great. So JT, yeah, I'm sure you've seen this, in the many years you've been coaching, kind of the two divergent paths. What makes a difference, and what do you do as a coach to help people come back?
Yeah, well, as I said, I don't have personal experience to rely on, but what we do is practice that a lot. And sports is a zero-sum game. So you're at 50%. So it's a coin toss. Half the time you're going to fail in something. And so it's setting up simulations where you go into it knowing that. And if you're an athlete at Stanford, so when I was competing here, whichever team I was playing on in a scrimmage probably had a 60% chance of losing. So, I helped foster a lot of learning, and so we create these situations where that can happen, and we kind of know it's going to happen in our sport. Look, I mean, a lot of it is built into our sport. It's absolutely the worst vantage point of any sport played on earth, and it's a team sport. You have to stay connected with people from a frog's eye view. Everyone in the place has a way better vantage point, so you're starting out losing right away when everybody else can make a better decision than you. So you get a lot of reps at that. You get a lot of opportunities to try different forms of emotional regulation. You have a lot of opportunity for collaborative problem solving because you get in this moment. The other thing is you're far away from the coach. So as much as you might look at me and I'm here because I'm, the guy who coaches, but they can't hear me in the wall. By the way, our associate head coach is Susan Ortwine. Susan is here and has been with me this whole time. She was also at UOP in the world of the intellectual startup. And then Brenda Villa, who's a 4-time Olympian, other associate head coaches here. She, by the way, could see the game better from the water than I could from the deck, and even from the very top of Avery Stadium. Somehow she was able to piece together the game in her head. And she's also sorry, Brenda, but the shortest player to compete in the 2000 Olympics, I think, in Sydney. But it's overcoming what setbacks that are built into the game. So it's a wonderful opportunity where on a daily basis we can do that. And yeah, we set up those simulations to replicate games. So representative learning design, but with an eye toward debriefing and understanding our failures.
Yeah, so I think we set up a sort of a false contrast. So it's like you do your physical training and then your mental training, but the best coaches are doing both and are thinking about the mental side of the game while they're doing the physical training. How much do you tell the players that? Or are you just sort of, manipulating their minds in the background?
So I would like to think they could sit up here and tell you what they're thinking after a goal gets scored and they're down by 3 goals with 2 minutes left in the game, 3 minutes left in the game, what they want their body language to look like, how they're going to gather, how they'll look at one another, who's going to speak in a given circumstance, and be able to go through that. I mean, they should be able to do that. And as people who are going to go on to be leaders far beyond Stanford, I'm much better off letting them do that. And believe me, in the moment, it's far more empowering for them to hear that than for me to be giving some signals from the side and everyone think, wow, the coach is really, really sharp.
But just to be clear, when you're setting up these simulations, you're saying, look, this is learning how to go down a goal or two and come back. So they're aware that is part of the goal, the part of the simulation.
Well, and I think it's a really good point because we win more games than we lose here by a fair amount. And so it'd be easy to say, hey, what are the best chances of a situation that's going to rise? And it's like, hey, guys, we're ahead by 4 goals, a minute left. Just hold on to the ball. That we don't really get far with that. But yeah, being behind and facing that sort of peril. I'm a Giants fan, can't stand the Dodgers, but man, that was some amazing stuff and incredible plays and the poise was just amazing. So yeah, we set up most of those so that you're having to overcome odds and talking about what that feels like, how you're going to respond from it, and embracing the failure that comes from it. Not just, I know there are a lot of people who are experts in failure and say, hey, it's okay to fail, but they don't really believe it. But yeah, I think you have to love it and celebrate it. I'm human, look, we failed. And this is how we're going to get better and why that's the best fuel for us.
Yeah, failure is it's how you define that. It's okay to go down a goal and come back.
Lowercase.
Yeah, the lowercase. Yeah, so Yetza, Kelly, what would you add to this question of how do you come back from setback, from injury, illness, a goal, deficit, whatever it might be?
Go ahead. Just what JT is saying. I'm picking up what he's putting down in general. After our first meeting, I sent him this frantic email that probably seemed a little creepy. I was like, I love you. We're like this. We're the same person, but not really, kind of. So I just love what he's saying. So all the we's that JT shared is just really where I'm going to lean into. So for me, the answer is build community, build community, build community, build community. That's a solution to almost anything in life. And I'll explain. There's anecdotal and there's also empirical data to support that. And I'm speaking specifically to people who are just like beyond the college bubble. So once you get past athletes dining and dormitories and classes, where community is essentially part of your daily structure, and you're a pro athlete, you go to practice, you go to the weight room, you go to treatment, and you go home by yourself. And that's it. And you do the same thing the next day. It's a really lonely road, especially if you're in a foreign country or if you're in a country that's not your own. When you're on a pro team, you have maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 nationalities around you. All the languages are different. So, once that bubble is sort of burst and you're out there on your own as an athlete, I have to tell you, building community is literally, it's an intervention. And I'll describe it anecdotally and empirically in just a moment. Anecdotally, in competition, that community can really serve you very well. In my case, my mental conditioning coach used to always ask us, who are the most meaningful people in your life or the most meaningful relationships in your life? And he had us build this social universe map, which is a great exercise for us. And I always, number one, said my dog, because my dog is amazing. She's a Shih Tzu. She can long jump. We have a video. It's on YouTube. I'll send you the link after this conference. She's amazing. And the reason I would say that is because he wanted us to fire a memory of equanimity, of solitude, of peace, of joy, and of love. He wanted us to be able to, in the competition when we were down, if I was on my last jump, in the trials, and I wasn't sure if I was going to the finals, and I was stressed and my sympathetic nervous system was ramping up, he wanted me to be able to fire a memory of something that just brought me to a space of joy and love and calm and flow. And then invariably, I would jump out the pit. So being able to fire a memory of a community that's safe, stable, nurturing, loving, caring, kind, grounding is useful in a competition. Katie Ledecky talked about it in her graduation speech last year. She said she fired a memory of her grandparents to get to an Olympic win, where she wasn't doing well for the first part of that Olympics. So it's more than a notion, people. Like it's a real thing to be able to draw on a community of love and grounding. So that's the first thing. That's anecdotal. Non-anecdotal, empirically, what we found is that during the 2024 Olympic consensus that we were really honored to lead, what we found is that serial winning coaches like JT and others, because he's a beast, and like Tara Vanderveer, Ariema, sorry, we have to bring UConn because whatever, they're very good too. They are characterized by building communities based on mutual care, respect, empathy, conscientiousness, and purpose. So that's been studied. Again, this is empirical data. So if you've got coaches that have 1, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, if you really dig any sport, typically they've built that kind of safe, stable, nurturing community. That's just what they do. In my training group, again, we had so many different nationalities. My coach had family dinner every single night of the week, Monday through Friday. So I'm competing against Chantal Malone. She's BVI, British Virgin Islands. She's a long jumper on Saturday, but Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we're at my coach's house every night for family dinner. We look forward to those dinners more than we look forward to training, because they were so grounding. Just to look into my coach's eyes, knowing that he loved and cared and respected me, my teammates. I mean, we talked about nothing for those times, and we could physiologically feel ourselves just in those moments settling. And so our mental well-being was being boosted. Now, that's the empirical data. There's more that I can share, but the important part for me is also the survival advantage. So there's a performance advantage, and there's also a survival advantage, particularly for girls and women. So in that consensus, we found that 1 in 2 women in sport will experience interpersonal violence of some kind in sport, whether it's harassment or abuse. And in some cases, like what we saw after Paris 2024 in Kenya, it can be fatal. So why does community matter in this environment? It matters because when you have an environment that is safe, stable, and nurturing, which again is the definition of relational health and wealth, you can surface low-level concerns frequently and routinely. I stubbed my toe. I hate the red Gatorade. Why won't they make it purple Gatorade? I mean, this is ridiculous. Why is my uniform so tight? Low-level concerns. My nails don't look good today. What should I do? Now, in those environments, the chances that you surface high-level concerns, I believe I'm experiencing domestic violence. I'm having suicidal ideations. The likelihood of surfacing those in that kind of environment skyrockets. So it's protective and it's life-saving as well. So building community, again, this whole sort of Ubuntu, I am because we are, it's nice, and I have 100 cliches in my back pocket for everybody, but it's also really, really rigorous data to support it as well as a performance advantage and a survival advantage.
That's awesome. It's true. I love, everything that you just said. Yeah. I think you really described so much about the importance of building that community. Yeah. And I also am thinking about just the role of something very simple as just even asking those questions for ourselves of like, who and what is important to me? Yeah. Just that question helps to kind of call up our sense of community. So there's the role of, coaches and systems and building those nurturing communities. And then there's also for us as individuals in them to reconnect with who and what's important to me. When I think about showing up as my best self here, what words come to mind about how I've done that and what that looks like? When we can connect with those actions and those core values in action, that also helps us connect with our why, helps us to feel that sense of belonging and community and safety. So.
Great. Well, Kelly, maybe I can turn back to you for the next question, which is, we could have a week-long retreat to talk about these things, but maybe you can just share, what are the essentials, right? Like when you're working with student athletes here at Stanford, one-on-one, what do you feel like are the basics that you train in that they need to know?
Big question. I think actually the conversation that we just had is a really important one that when we think about individuals coming in, we maybe lose sight of. And so I just want to ground us into, I think what JT and Yetza said around the importance of that community and that belonging. When I think about the individual, there's really kind of three core mental skills that come to mind that are used really kind of in the moment. The first is breath. I'm sitting up here, my heart's pounding, and I'm using my breath right now. Just breath is our first mental skill. And the idea of breath work to be able to, down-regulate and our breath is in the moment. It helps to anchor us into the present. So if you made me have one, it would probably be breath. But a second one that's really important when we think about kind of what we're doing in the moment is really a task focus. Our focus can be, on any number of things like, how am I doing up here? What are people thinking about me? Or how am I feeling? Or what am I doing right now? Like, what's my job? What's my role? And I think helping our student athletes think about that task focus, that can be really important and helpful. And then a third one is recognizing and using our self-talk. Thoughts, we can't really control those. Otherwise we'd, never have a thought we didn't want to think. But our self-talk are thoughts that we choose to have. And if we could have that self-talk be instructional, kind of telling us what we want to be focused on, guiding us, I think those are sort of three pieces that are really important. Assuming that we've also connected with our why, we've connected with who we are and how we want to show up, as people.
I want to hear some more hot tips from all of you. So, Sydney, I'm sure you have many in your toolkit, but maybe you can share just one secret with us. Like, what's one thing you do for your mental training that you feel like, really is essential?
Yeah, I love that question. I love talking about mentality and stuff. I think my favorite one that really resonates with track and also with studying too, as a student, is this idea of embracing the discomfort. I think a lot of times when I find myself not being as mentally tough, it's because I haven't done something that I don't want to do. So for a long time, like I love sleeping in, not a morning person. I was up at 6 a.m., the year before I was training for Paris because I didn't want to do it. And so that's exactly what I had to do. And day after day, as I continued to kind of force myself to do this, I was proving to myself that I am mentally tough and I am able to commit to doing something and I'm strong in that way. And then slowly but surely, the tasks or the races that seemed so daunting, they were just a race and they were just a task. But it's proving to yourself and proving to myself that that's just what it is, because I think sometimes we get so caught up in this big mental block around, what something is or what I need to do or what it has to look like. So I think the easiest way to do that is start small with like getting up early, and then, it can move into greater things. Like, for example, I'm a 100-meter and 200-meter runner. So if you're a runner, if your coach makes you run the 400, you're in for a rough day. So that's exactly what my coach would make me do, and I'd be in 400s, and slowly but surely that was not daunting anymore. So I think it's like really strategically picking things out that are daunting to you, and then proving to yourself that you're bigger and stronger than them.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And just to contrast it with what I think many people perceive as mental health is about avoiding suffering. And what you're saying is almost the exact opposite. It's like, no, mental health comes when you face the tough things, right? And that doesn't mean you want bad things to happen, you shouldn't avoid, systemic issues, but facing them is what builds toughness and mental health. JT, what's your secret?
I've always thought of, and we've addressed most of these, but sort of the three strategies that we use are find and celebrate failure, make lemonade, we've talked about reframing, and get lost. And the get lost is just sort of that reverse engineering. So talking to someone like you, Sydney, and just saying, how did you do this? Like, how have you gotten there? It's the best book on this is Resilience, the Science of Overcoming Life's Greatest Challenges. I think it's Southwick and Charney, and it's great research, but it started with interviews and asking stories of people who've been through serious trauma. Rather than do that so much, I would just find athletes that were incredibly resilient and then start trying to understand how they got there. And so many times it was just their families had unusual ways of doing things. So these two sisters that I coached who were amazing, they were so mentally tough and so resilient in difficult moments. So I said, what did you do over the break? So Thanksgiving break, said, we did escape rooms. So you can go to a movie together or make a meal together. They did escape rooms, and not just one. They went to like 3 of them. And they just loved the collaborative problem solving. But we also had one who really stood out, family vacation to Alaska. They asked the people there to take them blindfolded out into the middle of nowhere, give them a chart and a compass. And they said, good luck getting back. We'll have dinner at the lodge if you make it. And there was kind of, and then there are bears over here and over here, but all the best to you. So reverse engineering that and then realizing, okay, that's useful. How can we incorporate some of those skills of an escape room or wilderness survival into what we're doing in a much lower stakes way?
Much lower stakes.
Do you want to add a hot tip, Yetza?
Yeah, I'd love to. For me, it's gratitude journaling. I mean, at this big age of mine, I'm really interested in gratitude. I think that allows us as athletes to do a couple of things. We're so focused on the outcome and productivity. I think it allows us to really embrace the magic of the mundane, just the mundane little things that we might be grateful for, silly little things. For me, it would have been my nephew calling me this morning and showing me his new Tyrannosaurus Rex Lego that he built. I was really excited by it, so I wrote it in my gratitude journal. I think the other thing that allows us to do when you just think about all the things that you're grateful for over the course of a day, a week, a season, maybe even a year, it allows us as athletes to embrace kind of our full humanity, because sometimes I think we're so one-dimensionally focused as our performance. That can be very heavy. And it can also be dangerous because if something happens and you're no longer able to do that, who are you? And so embracing, I'm also a violinist and pianist and art history buff and sneakerhead, or a DJ, whatever it is. I think if you really just take a moment and you do your gratitude journal intentionally, so many things outside of sport kind of just fall onto the page. You start to also reflect on your own humanity as an athlete when you do that.
Great. Yeah, and just, this is a research conference. I will add that all of these things that have been mentioned are research-backed. There is research on failure mindset, stress mindset, the power of purpose, having physiological effects, the power of community, gratitude journals. All of these things have been research-backed. At the same time, I've found that, I do science and do the research, but a lot of what I do, I'm like, the athletes already know this, right? Like they're the ones who are living this, breathing this. They have to figure it out in the moment. And so I'm often turning to the athletes to be like, what do you do? And then can we study that and see how exactly does that work? Where does it, where does it not work and so forth? But I'd love to ask you all, and maybe Kelly, I'll start with you, like, what do you wish we knew? Like, what do we not know that you're like, you have athletes come to you and you're like, I don't have the answer to that. Or maybe it's just, I wish I had data to say, hey, we need more money for sports psychology. So what do you want the researchers in the room to do, or the researchers in the world to do?
I think that's a great question. I think one thing that comes to mind is not actually answering the question just yet, but I think about the power of even just asking, what is it that you do? I think that's another piece that I think a lot of times, so many of us, we just kind of go through our lives and there are things that we do that are super helpful and impactful. And until somebody says, like, what do you do? How did you recover from failure? How did you recover from setbacks? What's your secret sauce? What's the benefit of gratitude, right? We sometimes forget that we actually have all these tools in our toolbox, and it's really powerful to call up those tools because then we have them when we need them. So even just that question, I think, is a really valuable one. I think when I think about the research, specifically as it relates to performance psychology, I think one of the challenges that we have is so much of what, at least I do in my work, is very subjective. Student athletes, maybe they're learning different skills. We're talking to them about, did you use them? How did you use them? What was the effect? And so there's a lot of self-awareness is really important, but how we're measuring that, I think, is very challenging. There is tremendous advancements in technologies and wearables and different ways of measuring all kinds of things, but the technology is kind of outpacing the research. And so I think the questions that I am interested in are, how can we better measure effect? How do we know that we're being effective? What does that look like? What are some of those outcomes that we would be searching for? That's what first comes to mind.
Yeah. Sydney, what question do you want to have answered?
I think for me, visualization has been so important in terms of mentality. And I think, it's kind of become a little bit more commonplace to talk about visualization in the past couple of years, but I think just as an athlete and in my own teams, it'd be great to kind of see really super strong data behind that, and physiologically in our brains, what's going on when we're visualizing a race or visualizing recovery. I came back from my injury to run at Nationals this year and ended up winning. Oh, thank you. Just had to mention that. But it was an interesting kind of case study on visualization because I wasn't actually able to train every single day of the week like I had been for years and years. And so how do you kind of bridge that gap with, I wanted my mind to still feel like I was ready to perform at 100%, but my body maybe wasn't ready to do so. And it was incredible to see the power of visualization in just my training alone this year, because when I got to the blocks, I felt like I had been, had a whole full season of training. So that's one thing that I think would be super awesome, because I know multiple athletes, and myself included, have really benefited from that technique.
As a young gymnast, I hurt my ankle before it was a regional competition, and my mother said, well, that's okay. You can just visualize your routines, which I did for the training, and then went and competed on it, qualified to nationals, and then the next day found out that my ankle was broken. So, well, how, why, how bad was it broken? There are lots of questions we can ask there, but since then, I have not seen any research done to explain what happened there. We have some around placebo effects and pain. We have some around visualization, but even though we know some things, the amount that we know compared to like all we know about the ACL is like so very little, right? And I think there's a tendency to group the mind together as like one thing. It's like, okay, yeah, and then there's mental training and just like have a positive mindset or something. And I'm like, but yeah, like, is it a belief? Is it an attitude? Is it a focus? Is it a community? Is it like, what is the thought, right? And you might be like, oh, that's all mental mumbo jumbo. And I'm like, well, do you want your knee surgeon to be like, yeah, there's like ligaments and tendons, but like, it doesn't really matter. We just go in there and move some things around. Like, we need more sophistication. At the level of sophistication that all of you biomechanical doctors and metabolism type people do. We need that as psychologists. So just a plug, like we got to go there. I think we have maybe 1 or 2 minutes left. So if people want to start coming up to the mics, we can take a question or two.
Hi, Roxanne from McGill University. Thank you for your talk. At McGill, we have a women in sport program, and so our female varsity athletes are lucky enough to have a team of mental performance consultants. And when we look at our teams, we see a difference between coaches that actually buy into mental performance in sports psychology and coaches that don't. So I guess my question is, how do you convince a coach that integrating mental performance in their YTPs or their just daily practices will be beneficial when coaches are saying, well, it's going to take away from physical training and technical training and tactical training. So, and I guess both athletes and coaches can answer that question. Thank you.
Have him talk to JT.
Yeah. Email JT.
You want to say?
Well, I just think they'll win more. So just tell them that or show them who's beating them. And I mean, that's a starting point. But I also think just what, the mission of McGill and McGill Athletics is for holistic development. And you just talk about what this is going to do for them as leaders and outcomes. So I know Scott started this morning by saying, I'd love to hear about this world-class woman athlete, 10 years without getting injured. How do we reverse engineer that? Take McGill leader, who's the CEO of a big Canadian company, who played college athletics at McGill. How does she attribute where she is to what she learned in athletics? And I guarantee a lot of it is around the mental skills from it.
Yeah, I think it's such a good question that we don't have an immediate answer to. And there was, somebody mentioned it this morning, it's like, tell them how hard you train, but not how much you rest. And there's something about this where it's like, it's sort of like the things that great athletes and great teams keep quiet. It's like, oh, we're doing that because we get an edge. But that has a broader sort of quelling property on, oh, everybody's doing this, but actually the great coaches are all doing it. So how do you bring that to the light and share that? Yes.
Hi, I'm Steph Strack from Voice in Sport. We're a digital sport platform for girls, keep girls in sport through mentoring and wellness services. My question is really focused on young women athletes in college. We know there's some statistics around higher levels or higher percentages of depression and anxiety for young women athletes versus men. So can you speak on, latest research, thoughts on that, and how do we help, prevent by helping these younger girls that are rising up?
Kelly, can I give that one to you?
Yeah, I'll take a crack at it, and I'd love to have other folks chime in. I think, great question. I think a couple things. One is, I do think the ways that we measure depression and anxiety lend themselves to that's more how depression and anxiety presents in women. And so I think that is one factor. I think that sometimes how depression shows up in men and male athletes looks a little different. So I just want to throw that out there. In terms of what we can do, though, I think a lot of some of what we've covered so far, right, in terms of thinking about what are the ways, what are the mindsets that we're, helping our young women, girls and women to develop? How are we thinking about acceptance and gratitude and really cultivating more of these, they're often called positive emotions, but I like to call them more comfortable emotions, ones that we want to have. And then a third piece is really learning how to manage and regulate emotions. And this is for all people, not just women and girls. But I think that we live in a world right now where when I'm sad, does that mean I'm depressed? Maybe we're just sad because like something sad happened. And so being able to tolerate uncomfortable feelings, tolerate ones that we don't really want to have, recognizing there's really good information that those feelings are giving us. So even kind of shifting our relationship with emotions are just some initial things I think about.
I think, do you have a quick comment?
Yeah, quick comment. So I think on that point, some of the measurement tools are not quite what we need them to be. So in my lab, we're developing a female college athlete anxiety and depression scale currently. So we'll keep you posted on that. And then also, I think there's a great intervention that I found out of Zimbabwe called the Friendship Bench, and it's exactly what it means. It's a space where you can just sit on it without having to say, I'm feeling depressed, I'm feeling like I have a hard time getting out of bed. You just sit there, and various people from your peer group are invited to come just find out what's going on and or talk about nothing. And so there are a few interventions that I've found all around the literature that have, I think, been simple enough to implement anywhere. And it's just a question of looking for them. What's going to work in a fast-paced sports environment, particularly when there's academic and athletic demands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. So I'll just end by saying, the beauty of sport is that it provides the opportunity to help people to understand who they are, how they manage setbacks, how they relate to others, how they appreciate their wins and recover from their losses. And no matter what touch point that you have with athletes, young or old, what you do in part is psychological along those lines. So remembering that as we go forward is a good place to start. So thank you. Please join me in thanking our panelists.
Well done. Good luck.